This is Between Sundays, and I've been thinking, I have before, and it's been back on my mind again about growth. And there's all kinds of growth that we strive for in this life. We want to mature personally, we want to grow a business, or we want our children to grow, we want to grow spiritually, or you want to grow some flowers or whatever. And those all have some connectivity there. But I've been thinking about whether or not we cause it. Do we cause growth? And I think that depends on whether we're talking about ourselves, or we're talking about the things around us, the endeavors we undertake. There's obviously some different implications either way. But, if you think about it, you think about a farmer, and we say that he grows corn, or somebody's growing a business, or we're growing a church. It's a common way of speaking, and it's not wrong exactly, but it's also not quite true. For example, when it comes to the farmer, right? He plants corn, but he doesn't grow corn. He can't grow corn. He does not have the ability to create life. That is all in the seed. That's all in the kernel of corn, or whatever it is you're growing, the apple seed, the, your roses, whatever. We don't have that ability to create life. It is a design that's been put into that seed by the Lord, and the nature does the rest. It's miraculous, but that doesn't mean the farmer has no responsibility, right? He does a lot. He prepares the soil, right? He tills it up, and depending, there's a lot that's going on there depending on the composition of the soil. If he's used this field before, maybe he needed to rest it, or maybe he needed to add some nutrients to the soil so that his crop would be healthy. So he prepares the soil. He turns it over. If it's a fresh field, right, he might get rid of a bunch of rocks and whatnot. But he prepares the field. He plants the seed. He irrigates. He brings in water. Or he prays for rain, or does both, right? He does what he can to protect his crop from weeds and pests. He pays attention to the proper timing when it comes to planting. Am I planting this in the right season? You see, but he doesn't actually grow it. That's the deal. The growth is not his responsibility. The environment is his responsibility. He is creating the proper environment that gives this crop the best chance of success, because he cannot control germination. He cannot control the weather, whether it's too cold, or whether there's not enough sunshine, or whether there's not enough rain. He can't control that. Growth happens within a system that he did not invent. All he can do is manage the environment and wait. What we often do is we confuse participation with control. That if I just do X, Y, Z, then I'll have whatever. If I just put in this work, I will see these certain results. And that's, you and I both know that's not true. There's real work involved, but it's indirect work. The outcome is never fully in the farmer's hands. And that's the case if you're trying to run a business, or, if you are listening to this podcast and you enjoy flowers or growing vegetables or whatever, you understand fully what we're talking about here. You're doing a bunch of work, but the outcome's never fully in your hands. It's indirect work. And where this applies is in parenting. You want your children, you want your children to turn out to be the best adults that they can be. So you are training. You're doing your best, right? You can model, you can guide, you can protect, but you cannot force maturity. You cannot force wisdom. You cannot force understanding. You cannot force comprehension. You have to do your best to continually and repetitively instill these things into this young person and hope that and pray that one day, right, it sticks and that they finally begin to understand and comprehend and get a little bit of wisdom. But while you cannot force maturity or wisdom, I certainly can control the environment that my children are in, right? I mean, I get to control what's on the TV. I get to control which of their friends come to my house. I get to control which of their friends I allow them to go see. I get to control whether or not they go to church, right? I get to control which food they eat to a large extent. I get to control what attitudes I will tolerate and will not tolerate, right? I am working at crafting the proper environment for my children. Spiritual growth, discipline, your disciplines matter. And this one is, like I said earlier, it's a little bit more direct because we're talking about you. Like if we're talking about, we don't call it growth, well, then that is, of course, true for what I said about the farmer or about your children. But when it comes to yourself, that's a different matter because, like, I'm the one that chooses whether or not I am disciplined in my spiritual self. I am the one that makes my own choices in the development of my character. I am the one that controls my thought processes, whether I'm going to listen to this, think about that, meditate on this. Should I even be thinking about this? Am I going to get rid of that thought? That's a different matter. We're talking a little bit about those exterior things that we don't really have control over. I think what we see is that growth resists coercion. You can't force it. You can't put too much pressure on it or it'll break. And I think this is the difficult part for us to accept sometimes. What we want is guaranteed outcomes and we don't get it, especially when we've done a lot of work for it. It's it's responsibility without the control. And that screams against us from the inside. We hate that. We're responsible for all this, but we're really ultimately not in control. Therefore, we cannot guarantee an outcome. And that's hard when you feel like you've put in all this work for nothing. Now, the opposite side of that coin is if you can't control the outcome, why do you want to put in all the work? Is it worth even doing? I mean, it's a tough cookie if you really start thinking about it. Responsibility without control, that should not excuse laziness or neglect. I've talked a lot about to other people and in other places, consistency, just putting in the work, because, Solomon said, in all labor there is profit. So the question then becomes, how much am I laboring? So if I continue to put in the work and I'm just consistent at it, generally speaking, you'll see results, but I'm not fully in control of the results. So I don't want to be lazy and I don't want to be neglectful. I want to do the best. This is the deal. You do the best you can, and you let the results take care of themselves. And generally speaking, if you are very diligent in doing the best you can, you'll generally see good results. And so, look, the idea that we don't control or we don't cause growth, it redefines your responsibility. And in some, it doesn't let you off the hook for the work, but it does take a little bit of pressure off that you are not fully responsible for the outcome. We are responsible in these arenas. Like, this doesn't apply to all of life, but you can sit and think about what it applies to for yourself. But we are responsible for the environment, not the final result. That will limit a couple of things. It limits a lot of pride. I mean, there's all kinds of contests. My brother likes to grow things, and he likes to grow vegetables and flowers, and I know he's entered a couple of contests for his various things that he grows, and people have contests for all kinds of stuff, best rose, best this, best whatever. And you think about the person who grew the best rose. Well, they worked really hard at the environment, but they didn't grow the rose. So I just feel like this thought and this, what I think is true, should really kick against a little bit of pride. You worked hard to create a good environment for this to be produced, but you didn't fully produce that. It also eliminates some guilt when things don't go exactly the way you want them to go or the way you expect them to go. And of course, that was the very first episode, when things don't go as planned. If all I can do is manage the environment and things don't turn out the way I want them to, in spite of all the work I put in, yeah, it's going to be rough, but I'm not fully responsible for that. Now, I'm not talking about making bad decisions. I'm just talking about these certain issues, like, you're going to manage the environment your children grow up in, and you're going to try and teach them. But at some age, at some point in time, that child will begin to think on his or her own and make their own choices and become responsible for their own decisions, regardless of what you have taught them. So if you put in all that work and you work diligently and you're a good parent, and that child turns out to be, however you want to phrase it, not great, it's not your fault. So the question is, this morning, it's not how do I make this grow. Like, I'm thinking about this podcast between Sundays. I've asked myself this: how do I make this grow? Maybe the right question is, what kind of environment am I creating? Think about this show. I want to think about it for myself out loud. Think about this show. What kind of environment am I creating? What kind of content am I putting out? Is it attractive? Is it consistent? Is it things that people actually want to hear? Is it philosophical enough? Is it interesting? Does it help somebody? Those are a lot of questions, and they're not necessarily environment related, because, honestly, this doesn't apply because I'm sitting in my living room in a comfy green chair with my feet up on an ottoman and boom mic in my face. But you understand what I'm saying. And then there's patience. What kind of environment am I managing? And then I just am patient with it, and I keep putting in the work. So look, growth takes time. And it just does. It takes 9 full months to have a baby. The washing machine, it has a timer. The dryer has a timer. takes a full season's worth. By the time you plant a crop in March or April, all the way until late September when it's harvest, or mid-September, or whenever it is, right? Things take time. And some things only grow when we stop trying to force them to. Our role is to tend the soil faithfully, do all that work, all that management of the environment, and then let the rest unfold in its proper season. So think on that this week. Thanks for listening to Between Sundays. We'll talk to you soon.